and welcome to Culture Fair. I'm Sophie Shevarsnadze. Today we're going to be looking at the Russian architecture. With the start of the third millennium, Russia is experiencing an architectural boom. With the fall of the USSR, a new era came, demanding the changes to every aspect of life. It's illustrated very well by the word perestroika. In Russian, it means reconstruction. New housing and offices were constructed, and old buildings were renovated nationwide. However, Moscow is taking the lead. In the capital, they're building on a Russian scale, and sometimes with excessive eagerness. Muscovites say that their hometown is unrecognizable. Right behind me, you can see what's left of the famous Hotel Russia, which, by the way, was the biggest one in Europe. With the Kremlin and the Moscow River right in front of me, I can tell you the view is amazing from out here. I mean, everyone stayed in this hotel at some point. Mikhail Gorbachev, George Bush Sr., Bernardo Bertolucci, Mike Tyson, and many more. This giant hotel accommodated over 10 million people in the 50 years of its existence. It used to be a symbol of the USSR's might and power. 5,000 rooms were located on 32 acres of prime land. But for the last few years, guests were loath to stay there. It doesn't feel very cozy living in such a large complex. About 2 years ago, the municipal authorities decided to demolish the Russia Hotel and to re-establish a historical area full of small hotels, restaurants and pedestrian walkways instead. The hotels were the first things that were subject to the global reconstruction in the city. The luxurious Ritz appeared on the other side of the Kremlin, replacing the Soviet Inturist Hotel. The main Soviet hotel of the country during Stalin times, the Moscow, is fully deconstructed and is now being restored. The front and side elevators will be preserved, but the interior will change completely. Architecture is much like a barometer. It immediately reacts to the changes in society, which in its own turn bring along new types of consumers with their specific tastes and needs. For the past 15 years, Russia has been in a constant state of change, thus creating perfect conditions for architectural experiments. Russia has always had plenty of experimentalists. At the beginning of the 20th century, following the Bolshevik Revolution, a social and political experiment took place, constructing a new society. In architecture, it manifested itself in a unique phenomena, innovative and almost cosmic constructivism. Constructivism is characterized by bold geometric shapes. They fit into each other with unexpected harmony. The so-called constructivists were accounting for everyday problems of the new society. The things they were building were useful and practical. Like this here is a building built for workers from factory number 30. And these people would hold some concerts and different meetings in here. The architect Melnikov built this Rusakov club in the shape of gear wheel, with 3 balconies made like supernal jacks, ledges. Russian constructivism became a unique phenomenon, a bright symbol of the new country and its corporate identity, and jump-started the development of world architecture. The constructivist buildings are mainly administrative ones, and most of them are very well preserved, what isn't quite the case for the community apartment houses. This innovation is typical for the first years of Soviet power. Apartment blocks were built to house workers from particular departments. This one was the Ministry of Finance.
The minister himself used to live here with the regular clerks. Instead of a kitchen itself, there were kitchen modules, special bays for keeping dishes in. For eating, there was a dining room located in a separate building, together with a day nursery and laundry. Now for leisure time, a solarium with a garden on the roof. The utopian ideas of those times soon became irrelevant. In the early 1930s, Stalin declared a dramatic change of government policy for architecture. The constructivism which was shaping the Republic was superseded by an imperial style of victorious Stalin system. With the fall of the communist regime, Russia had overcome another obstacle, holding back creativity in architecture. Along with this came a change of architectural priorities. New man in New Russia was demanding his own private space filled with the latest technologies. To achieve it, he was ready to experiment and had architects work for him directly. The most popular location beyond the city's borders.
Russian people aren't urban by their nature. Russia, with its vast expanses, has always been an agricultural, pastoral country. And today, everything has come full circle, especially that now the city life is suffering from such overpopulation and traffic.
The very first Russian architecture was wooden. Wood is the cheapest and most widely available material and was traditionally used in Russia for building peasant houses, izbas. At the beginning of the 20th century, 90% of the country's population were peasants, so most Russian homes were wooden. Nobility manors and country estates, and the later famous Russian dachas, were also built out of wood. And during Soviet times, you could easily buy a plot of land and build your own dacha in any style you liked. Today, dacha villages are being planned far and wide. Owners are trying to stand out and hiring the most fashionable architects. That's why here we can find some very interesting new projects. This country retreat is located 25 kilometers outside Moscow. It now belongs to enthusiasts who are no strangers to experiments.
A whole town is being built here, or more like a club. And this club will offer every single facility that a countryside may possibly offer. You name it, yachting, golf course, stable over there. They have beaches, restaurants, townhouses. I mean, needless to say, this club will promote a very particular lifestyle. Wow. Let's meet the architect. Hi.
Hi, hello.
Sophie.
Boris, nice to meet you. Please sit down.
So you're going to show us around?
Yeah, and a little bit about the concept of this place.
What are you planning to build here?
We have already done the concept of the hotel and the entry zone. So we're going to build it.
So can you show us what you think is the most interesting thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
What?
So,
Let's do it.
So on this type of small buildings will be built here on this territory in one format, one geometrical format. So very small, it's like summer houses.
Take a look, it's really cool because you can see through. Oh my god, how perfect. How compact.
It's new type of luxury. It's a new type of development through the design, to the good design. So it's very small, but very good design thing.
Very good quality.
Very good quality and very very simple.
This terrace with a lake view makes up for the modest living space. Other solutions for these small houses are uncertain because they're all being constructed by different architects under the supervising plan of one chief architect, Eugene Asse.
Tell us about these red cottages here.
So this is part of Côte d'Azur restaurant.
Yes.
And these are small houses for rent.
Red cottages by Totam Kuzanbayev are little reminders of constructivism, with the difference being that now these are not homes for the public, but private beachfront houses.
And this is the most cool and nice architectural objects here in this territory.
What is this?
This is the pavilion for vodka ceremony, made by Brodsky, Alexander Brodsky, architect.
What is this made of?
It's made from windows, old windows. They kept all old windows from garbage places, different garbage places, and made of this beautiful art piece. It's between art and architecture.
This is how these old windows got a second life. The lack of glass is not a problem. The architects pulled plastic tightly over as paints, like they often do in old houses. Now it looks conceptually Russian.
And this architectural object is a part of a project named Will Landscape. It was designed special for Klezmer. It's small houses around the territory with different functions. For example, this is a function for yachtsmen and people who are working here in this territory.
Who did this?
The project?
Yes.
I did.
Boris created these touching seahorses, illuminated from below as a symbol of seaside vacation. Now he's waiting for his pavilion to change color. With dump here, this wood will turn gray, like it is meant to.
This is another one of really special projects from what I've been told. Each side of this house has a human face, a different one too. For example, this one you can see, the patio serves as a huge nose, and the other side, it has a smaller nose and rounder eyes, and I think it's really cool and very original. We can make a tour to see what other faces it has.
This is 100 hectares, and the main idea is to develop it not to build and to sell, but to find the right people, friends with money, to build with them together. And to
only friends?
Yeah, only friends. So, and to develop territory not through the building and reselling it, but to make a good design, to make good quality objects, and to combine different things, art, architecture, together in one territory, one space.
All of these buildings are united by one idea: harmony with nature and the landscape.
Lack of space in the city complicates things for large-scale construction. Since most of the historic centers of ancient Russian towns consist of labyrinths and streets of small mansion-like houses, architects have to accomplish the difficult task of fitting houses into the architectural ensemble, and most importantly, to get the go-ahead of the local construction authorities. On the so-called Golden Mile right now. This district got this name not only because the land here costs as much as gold, but also because this is the historical heart of the city and the most prestigious place to have an apartment or an office.
In the 1990s, the demand for elite housing exceeded supply. Back then, there were simply no apartments which Russian oligarchs could buy. The solution was found fast: club buildings. A small number of apartments provided security and the highest standard of construction. Everything was brought from abroad, including the builders. The architectural bureaus opened and offered clubhouse projects.
These emerald plates go well with the name of the house, the copper house. I mean, obviously the whole building is covered with these copper plates. And the main architect, Sergei Skuratov, was faced with a difficult task of building in this apartment building with a really thin corridor between these two buildings, but it turned out great. This is another famous apartment building, and it's known for its first ever lawn island. There are only 18 apartments and plenty of space to lay around.
Contemporary urban architecture is unthinkable without high-rise buildings. On one hand, it's a housing solution, and on the other, it provides height to the city, which is at risk of becoming urbanized. Before the beginning of the 20th century, bell towers dominated Moscow's skyline. The construction of high buildings concealed half of them, and the rest were destroyed by the communists. It became clear that the city needed new, taller landmarks, and that's when Stalin's so-called Seven Sisters were built. The idea was to make towers stand out above Moscow and correct the city's perspective, which it did. The high-rises fit into the urban landscape with harmony.
You can see all of those famous Stalin high-rises out of here. There is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Right behind it you have the Hotel Ukraine. Now, two of those buildings were just apartment buildings, and it was really prestigious to live in them back then. But you can only get a flat if you were a government official or a celebrity. It seems like all the Stalin high-rises were built by the same person. But actually, all seven of them have a different architect, and each one of the buildings is famous in its own right. This is the Moscow State University right behind me, which is the main university not only in Moscow, but in all of Russia. Originally, the architects wanted to put a giant statue of Stalin on top of this building, and then they realized that on a foggy day, you could only see the feet of the great leader. So then they decided to put the spire instead of the statue.
The building which houses the Moscow State University is probably the most elegant high-rise of all. It is 240 meters high and there are 36 floors. It is well arranged like stairs with a spire crowned with a 12-ton star on top.
Massive wooden doors, Russell columns, voluptuous classical ornaments on the walls. All of this were the elements of the so-called Stalin Empire style, which was the official architectural style of this country up to 1955.
The totalitarian state architecture was used in the service of the dictatorship. Stalin liked classical shapes and large scale. He wanted to show the USSR's might to the whole world. Gigantic columns symbolically combated the imaginary enemy. Huge statues praised the image of Soviet men, and apartment buildings were paneled with granite and marble. Recently, another pseudo-Stalin high-rise grew up under Moscow's sky. Triumph Palace, 264 meters high, it became the tallest apartment building in Europe. Soviet passion for the gigantic reluctantly makes way for high-tech skyscrapers. Triumph Palace will not hold first place in the capital sky for long. On the Moscow's river embankment, another skyscraper complex is taking root, Moscow City.
So when did this project start? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Physical construction started in seriousness in January of 2005 on Tower B with the foundation work.
The business center is going up quickly. and promises to be one of the most ambitious in high-rise architecture. Norman Foster has vowed to construct one 600-meter tall tower.
We're at the construction site of the Moscow city. This is a city being built within a city. 100 hectares will be used for this business center. 2.5 million square meters of building space. It's a pretty much self-contained unit with its own plant that will provide it with its own electricity. You can see how quickly objects pop up around the construction site of the Moscow city. There is the Bagration Bridge, and then right next to it we have an exposition center, and then over there there's a tower without a name so far.
Tower 2000 and the walkway bridge Bagration became the first and foremost projects within Moscow city of the 21st century. It's not simply a bridge. On the second level, there is a sightseeing point, shopping center, and a cafe.
This is just a model of what this place is going to look like. And the construction here is really at a high scale. For example, they're building this giant aqua park in the middle with 9 pools for 2,000 people. Right in front of it, you can see the white building, and that's where the Moscow City Hall is going to be moved to. And next to it, then there's another 50-story hotel that's being built. Federation Tower is being built by a German architectural bureau of a Russian architect, Sergei Shogun. And the 2 glass towers will be of 260 and 340 meters. And then there's one thin glass tower in the middle, which will be the elevator tower and will be of 420 meters high, which will once again set a record for the highest building in Europe. High-scale projects like Moscow City combine famous foreign architectural bureaus and Russian architects. And Russian School of Architecture once again reaffirms itself on international competitions. Today there are 2 main institutions that follow its firm tradition: the Moscow Institute of Architecture and Repin's Academy of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg.
The history of the Moscow Institute of Architecture dates back to 1749, when the first architectural school in Moscow was founded. Now it's the only body specializing in architecture in the whole of the post-Soviet territory. Graduates get diplomas not only in technical architecture, like in regular colleges, but also in arts. Students learn basics of creating architectural projects, about strengths of materials, and drawing. It's a sort of synthesis which unites architectural studios and engineering institutes. The school is tied to architectural colleges beyond the borders of the country. Since 1994, it's been accredited by the Royal Institute of British Architects. Among almost 1,500 students, there are some foreigners.
Hi guys, I've heard you're the foreign students here in this institute. I'm Sophie.
I'm Lakshana.
Hi. Hi, so where are you guys from?
Well, I'm from Cambodia.
You are?
New York City.
What makes you come to Moscow to this institute?
Moscow architectural studies are one of the best in Europe, and if I get my bachelor's here and my master's somewhere in the States, I think it will give me like a great opportunity to work anywhere in the world.
I know you're actually studying in Moscow already. You're in it. You live its everyday life. What do you think about it?
They really like to give us a lot of work because we have class Monday to Saturday from 9:30 in the morning till 6. So I don't know, no freedom time, but I think in the end it's going to be worth it.
Is it as competitive as they say it is?
Oh, yeah. Everyone is a competitor. She's like my competitor.
It's really hard to get into the Moscow Institute of Architecture. since it's very competitive and the lives of the future students are overloaded with work.
The most important thing for these beginners is to try themselves in a real architectural craft, even if for now it's just a scale model for an exhibition. Future architects have endless source of energy and imagination. All there's left is to wish for these scale models to turn into real projects. Thus we can be sure that the future of the modern Russian architecture will be worthily continued.